Oh, there we go. I do it.
Hey, Glenn, how are you?
Ah, there you are. Hey, what's happening?
Not much. Welcome to the live Q&A. It is 6 o'clock on a Thursday, so that is where we obviously have been supposed to be. How are you today, man? I haven't talked to you.
I am glorious and wonderful and jazzy.
That's amazing. So if you have questions that you would like to ask Glenn,
Now would
then
be an excellent time.
absolutely type your questions in the comments, and Glenn will answer them live. So our first question today, I asked some people throughout the week if they had any questions. And number one is, hey, Glenn, I love the show. I am getting busier and busier all the time, which is great, but I'm having a hard time keeping focus and staying on track. Do you have any tips for how to get organized?
Oh my God, you are so full of crap.
That question comes from a listener named Ben.
Yeah. Ben, I bet you his last name starts with a B. Hey,
Probably
Sandra.
not. Hey, Sandra.
Yeah. Calendar, man. Calendar. That's the things that I do is that I've used is use my Google Calendar and then like I vary my my notices. Like I used to have notices for all my clients, and I'm like, no, I can't do that because the thing's going off all the time during my work weeks, So I'm like, okay, I can't have my alarm going off all the time because then I eventually start ignoring it. So like now I just have things. I have an alarm set for this like 10 minutes before because it's kind of the only thing that I'm doing around this time. Right. So I only set alarms for certain things. So when it goes off, it's not going off that often. And then I can tell myself like, hey, it's going off. And when my brain doesn't want to look, I go, Glenn, you set an alarm for a reason. Like it does, not everything has an alarm. So check the notification, and then so that's been helpful. Different sounds on notifications. But other than that, I just use my Google Calendar like a social media platform. I'm constantly looking at it. I'm like, I probably check my calendar like, probably 50 times a day. I just look and I'll be like, oh, what do I want to do next? Or, oh, what do I have coming up? Oh, because I'm always doing something. So, yeah. But yeah.
Well, that makes sense, and that's helpful, specifically for me right now. Obviously, spoiler alert, that was my question.
I don't think anybody picked up on that. Thanks for throwing the spoiler alert in there.
Thank you. It's when new tasks come in, right? So when new big like you think that you get a schedule great, and then something comes along and it diverts your attention from it. And then you get, oh, hey, Marie says that, hey, guy, Glenn, I started your book today.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're getting more and more people reading it, which is wonderful.
That is great. Can we talk about the thing that you keep sending me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just picked a random chapter today and listened to a couple minutes of the audiobook files, and I loved it. Oh, Melanie says me too.
Nice, thank you, Melanie.
So I just opened a random, I think it was chapter 38, and I started listening to it, and I was like, it's weird. I read the book before anybody else. And I got like the rough drafts of the book and I read them in your voice. And then when we actually got the physical copy of the book, Dave did some narration for me. But now and I've read the book myself now, but with you actually reading it like an audiobook, I'm like, damn, this is a book.
Well, I'm glad it finally sunk in.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm so used to listening to books through Audible now, but like
maybe. And I think, but that's kind of part of the reason why I decided to do it too. It just never felt right until now. But it sounded right in my head, because most people know me from the podcast. So I'm like, well, they're listening to me, so they're going to want to listen to the book, so, and audiobooks are getting more popular. And the one audiobook I didn't like, somebody other than the author read it.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was a constant ebb and flow of, of the narrator's voice going, la, 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 la. And I was like, oh my God, I needed to read the book. Otherwise I would have thrown it away because it was just driving me crazy. But so I was like, okay, well, I have to read it because I'm the author. And it is not on Audible yet. I'm not done recording it yet.
No, he's sending it to us to edit. That's why I was listening to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Ben gets a sneak preview of everything. So yeah. I haven't even recorded it all yet. But it's it's a new thing because I have no idea what I'm doing. And part of me, of course, wants to do a good job. And the other part of me is like, I have to be authentic. So I'm kind of, I don't know. I think I'm just going to have to listen to it and see how it comes out.
We've never seen Mateo before right now.
I don't think that was Mateo.
That wasn't Mateo?
No, that was my friend. That's over the house at the moment.
Oh, all right. Frank. Well, all right then. Never mind. We still have never seen Mateo on the podcast.
No. Oh, there's Frank again.
Hey, Frank. All right. So, my second question for you right now, and if you have questions, please put them in down at the bottom. But this is a question that I was talking about with some close people earlier today. How do you react? How do you manage your reactions when you get bad news? Like, what is your, not even necessarily bad news, but news that's unfavorable, news that's uncomfortable, something that's uncomfortable? I know that we've done a podcast on pausing before reacting, and many of these things. So can you, I think you call it the sacred pause. Can you just talk a little bit? I don't even know if that's the direction you would go in, but can you just talk about bad news and how you react to it?
Yeah, the pause is, we have to just stop and recenter, and I think that's the most important thing. So it's, but once you recenter, then you have a chance. Then you have a chance of kind of navigating it out and stuff. And for me, usually I'm going to go in a direction of kind of negative news. So when it's negative news, I think it's important for us to take 30,000 giant steps backwards and gain perspective. So, our perspective is, and that's what I like to do. I like to jump 30,000 because I don't like to jump 5 and then go, okay, does everything make sense? I don't have the patience for that. So let's just jump 30,000 back and go, bring it as broad mindset as it takes. If it's life and death, then you look at it from life and death. Like, what does this mean? Okay, well, do I believe in eternal life? Do I believe that there's a God? Do I not? Like, and I mean, so well, I'll just finish that off. So where I would go to in that situation is, finishing off with, hey, Frank, can you stay somewhere? All right. It's distracting when you keep walking by and doing stuff. So yeah. So as far as the, the death, it's like, I would go back to my beliefs, obviously. So I would go and say, okay, well, what's the death perspective? I believe that I'm eternal. So, I'm going to go on the other side in a ball of faith and love and peace. And so I'm good. If I'm not good with that, then I think I need to start looking at that. And that's the work I need to do. I need to do the work on the thing that I'm not, the end thing that I'm not comfortable with. But you can't you can't stay stuck in the beginning of the problem. Oh my goodness, life or death. Oh my God, life or death. Oh, life or death. There's no answer there. There's no peace there. There's no calmness there. You're never going to get to the end of that because there isn't an actual question in it. So get back to kind of worst case scenario, or the big perspective question, and then focus on that. And then work through that. And then once you find peace there, then you can come back to the scenario that you're in and be like, oh, okay. Like, now I can handle this. Why? Because I answered the big question. That's why,
Absolutely. Sandra says pausing is very, very difficult to do in the moment. I usually freeze/faint and react like 2 days later.
Well, that counts. Really, honestly, the biggest problem that we have is taking action in the moment. So it doesn't matter what the pause looks like so much. Of course, we're going to try not to faint. If at all possible, but the most important thing is to not react in the moment, not to make the situation worse. That's usually what we do when we act in the moment. We just add a problem on top of a problem. So if you can take space, like, I think now I'm referring to my book because I've been reading it. I think, like, during this chapter, the sacred pause, I gave some examples of things like, hey, when do you need to know by? When can I get back to you? Learn that most situations don't need to be dealt with on the spot at that particular moment. Even most of the things that we think we do, it's usually an unconscious reaction that we think we're supposed to give an answer right away, or we think somebody else is expecting it. And most of the time it's not necessary. We can put a little space between us and the problem. And if there is a problem, because I know that there are people out there, I know them personally, that do literally faint with, when they get hit with something. It's like, most of the time people use the sacred pause to not react. Well, you can use the same sacred pause to not faint, like to train yourself that, like, there goes my bell. I didn't mute my phone. This is like a melee today.
What's the weather like in Florida right now?
It's pouring. It's pouring out right now. It's been beautiful.
Oh, nice. It's also pouring out here. I just, for whatever reason, I know the look of your house, and like, I just felt like it was dark and stormy there.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can use the same pause to train yourself to not succumb to the emotions pouring in that are making you faint. So it's basically the same tool. It's just using it for a different reason. So like some people, they use the pause to stop themselves from reacting and making it worse. Because their reaction is like a defense mechanism, especially, well, I'll use the example of anger, so a lot of times pausing helps people with anger, right? So because stimuli comes in and then you react out of anger instinctively, right? So that sacred pause helps that. This is the exact same process with the fainting. Stimuli is coming in, your reaction is not anger, it's fainting. So you just have to practice putting some space in between the stimuli and your reaction. So if you understand that, it's that you're like, no matter what stimuli comes in, I'm just not going to deal with it right now. I don't have to. I'm just going to put it on the back burner and get to it later. That could help.
And Sandra says exactly. So nice. Sweet. I'm glad that sorted things out for her. Now, one thing that I think is so lovely about this show is that if we got one question, you could go on it for a half hour, because that's generally how the podcast works, right? So the podcast, most of the time, I mean, nowadays with us both being, busy, we have a running list of topics that, people suggest and all of that stuff. But it started with showing up and going like, um, and Kate says, always working on responding versus reacting. Um, we all are, honestly, I think. At least
Yeah.
I am. I don't want to speak for everybody, but we it used to literally just be like, hey, what's coming up with you today? And then you would go for a half hour, which was always really, really nice. So I have another question, which is, how do you make yourself stop talking when you're in an awkward situation?
Well,
Because I'm very bad at it, as I'm sure you might know.
I mean, it's tough. I just want to preface it by saying that, I don't always do it perfectly, because that's why I can just ramble on for God knows how much time. But it's also why I have you on my podcast, because I do try. There is as much of a rambling as it is. I feel the energy coming through. Like I feel a flow of something, and I just go and go and go and go, and I stay in the flow, and information passes through me talking. So when that flow stops, I stop, and then and very often it's abruptly. So and then that's why you're so helpful, because then all of a sudden you pick the ball up and you keep the game going. So and then ask me another question, and I can go again. So that's kind of how it works now. But I remember when I was first getting sober and going to AA meetings and stuff, they want you to share, open up, share, and all that stuff. And I was petrified of public speaking and stuff. But I noticed once I got talking, I've always been a talker. So once I got talking, I would just go on. And I was, there was no shortage of people telling me to shut up. So I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to speak and stay in control of my brain. So what I would do is, like, I would think about what I was going to say before. I would have a specific point, and in the beginning, I would literally go blah, 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 blah. And I would say exactly what my point was. And then I would be like, and that's all I got, just very abruptly. And I would just sit down. And then I get to the point where I could allow myself to ramble a little bit. Like if something attached itself to that thought, I could follow it for a little bit. But then I would, like, if I noticed that I was like, usually if I notice that I'm talking, then it's time to shut up. That's what I would teach myself. I'd be like, point, then a little bit of expansion on the point. And then I'd be like, as soon as my brain went, should I be talking? If I'm asking myself if I should be talking, I probably shouldn't be. So as soon as that thought would come in, and I mean, again, now I was learning this, so it would be that would even be more abrupt. I'm not sure about Forrest Gump.
I don't know what that means.
He was very abrupt, though. I think I kind of know conceptually what she means. But I'd say a point and I'd be talking, and then all of a sudden I would stop mid-sentence sometimes, because I was really serious about teaching myself, and I didn't care how I sounded or how foolish I looked. So I just did that, and then I got a little bit better at it. But yeah, I think it's usually just the thing of saying, if I'm asking myself if I should still be talking, I should probably look for an exit. That's a big thing. And then the other piece that has helped me is I started understanding that people don't care about specifics. Like if you go, there was a bunch of traffic, and there was a bunch of cars, and there were trucks, and there were vans, and then there was some trucks pulling boats, and there were motorcycles. Like, nobody cares. They get it. Like, there was traffic. So the specific aspects of traffic, people don't need that, and they literally don't want it usually. So I think those were the two things that I consciously brought into my speaking that has helped me in the past.
Yeah, I personally, like, when I have nervous energy, no matter what, like good or bad, I over talk a
Me
lot.
too.
Yeah. So
Not all of it, and there's an aspect of it. Like I said, I did all this stuff learning, and, but like there's also an aspect of my talking, because I got made fun of, and, a lot, for talking a lot. When you're a teenager and your mouth never stops, there's no shortage of people telling you to shut up. So, and pretty rudely. So I was very self-conscious of it most of my life. And, but we have to accept that we're talkers too, to some degree, so not all of it's bad. It's how there's a reason why we talk so much, because not everybody does. We're communicators. It's not all bad.
that's true. Kate says, is it almost like setting an intention for the conversation or interaction?
Yes.
Should you do that every single time? Well, like, what if the thing happens in the middle of the conversation or the middle of the interaction where you weren't planning on it? So do you have to, well, I guess that might go back to the pause.
Well, I think it's really a matter of how much work you want to put into it. Like, I mean, if you really think it's a problem and you really want to put work into it, then yeah, like, you can, staying on point is another aspect. It's really, that's helpful in, like, I've kind of been talking about, like, when just random conversations, but if you're, what Kate was talking about, I think is more specific to specific conversations. So, like, when you're in specific conversations, it's great to send an intention for that conversation. Like, what am I trying to get out of this? Because, especially in relationships, people, friendships, romantic, whatever, people talk about stuff, and then they come back and they go, things are still the same. And it's like, well, what was the conclusion of the conversation that you had? You go, well, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? What do I mean? Like, why did you have to talk? Did you guys just sit back and talk and just said, hey, I'd like you to do this? And they say, yeah, I see what you mean. I'd kind of like to do that too. And then, you want to have burger and fries? Like, I mean, you got to come to a conclusion. If there's an issue, there needs to be, okay, what's the solution and how are we going to implement it? And what does that actually look like? So following that. So a lot in that mindset, this is kind of combines with that, and, or it could be separate from that, staying on topic. It's just staying on topic. When you start veering off topic, bring it right back onto topic, or stop talking, just be like, because nothing turns a conversation into an argument better than getting off topic. Again, these are usually difficult conversations I'm talking about now, but yeah, if you want to start an argument, just get off topic.
I personally, for myself, and I think that you're absolutely right, and that is definitely what I observe from other people. But for me, I tend to start an argument when I stay on topic too long.
Yeah, well, that's possible too. I guess who has that problem?
Yeah. Guys, you'll never see it, but when Glenn and I have disagreements, they're amazing.
Yeah, they're pretty good. We can get into it. It's like once I flip, I mean, I think well, this is debatable, but I'm somewhat even keeled in most of my life, but I have my moments, man. And if I go, it's not pretty. It's just not. I don't.
Yeah.
You know, I lived many years dysfunctionally, and I can fall back into some of those behaviors, and it's not pretty.
Yeah, and
Ben puts up with me somehow. So
well, and I can get very defensive. And actually, I'm excited. There's a podcast that we just recorded on Tuesday about defensiveness, and it's in the queue, so it shouldn't have come out for a while. But we talk about some really timely stuff at the end. So that will be the next podcast that comes out, which I think is this Sunday. So if you have a problem with being defensive, or what was the other word that we used? Protection, like protecting yourself.
safety, I think.
Yeah. Then that is a. Can you hear Braden in the background? I'm so sorry. He's eating pizza.
Wow,
Yeah, the defensiveness podcast is great, and is something that you had come up with. There's two. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's two parts. So, we kind of talked about defensiveness in general in the beginning, and then by the end, it just fell right into current events. So, so we did a second one, and I think the second one was mostly current events. But again, it's just, even if whether it's current events or whether it's not, it's just current events are used for an example. The current events right now are very extreme. So there's a large amount of contrast, which means we can see things clearer. So if you listen to that podcast 2 years from now, it's going to be just as relevant, because it's you just, whatever we talk about is just an example. I mean, there's 6 billion things you can use this stuff for in your everyday life. So, but yeah, it is a two-parter. So keep your eyes open for those. I think it's helpful in general, and I think it's helpful for what's going on right now.
Yeah. Dave and I had a conversation earlier today about songwriters and the two different types of like lyricists, the like vague, you can interpret whatever you want from the lyrics, and the people that write songs that are very specific, like, I literally say somebody's name in this and you can't possibly take it any other way. And he was like, I don't want to write those kinds of songs. And I was like, what's funny about those songs is that the more intricate you get, the more specific you get about something anyway, people just take what they want from it regardless, and that's what I think about these podcasts. Like sometimes, like if you're sharing a story or I'm sharing a story, or we're talking about a specific event in like someone else's life, it's still the people that are listening to it, and what I get from it is whatever I apply it to in my own life.
And that's exactly what is supposed to happen. This is one of the things. Recovery's been just popping up a lot lately, like in the last month. Examples that I learned in recovery and stuff. But like, one of the first things I was taught was to identify, don't compare when you're at a meeting. And what they mean by that is you're supposed to be identifying with the emotions that the person experienced. I felt like that. I thought like that. Like you're not supposed to compare the specifics. Like, well, this person totaled 6 cars and went through 2 divorces and lost 13 jobs, and I only totaled 1 car and had 1 divorce. So really, I mean, I don't really have anything in common with them. That's not the point. Like it's the point is, have you felt the way they felt? Can you identify? Don't compare stories. Try to identify with what they're saying, and then you can get something out of what the speaker is saying. And I think, all of the that is like spirituality 101. Spirituality 101 is where we're constantly talking about spiritual law, and spiritual law applies to everything. So if you're listening for the message that's underneath what we're talking about and see how you can apply it to your life, you're going to grow. If you go, like, I mean, there was times in the past where we've done podcasts and it was football season, and, I used sports and football as an example, and people were like, I'm not a football fan, so I don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, you missed it. Like you let the fact that you don't like sports shut your mind down, and you didn't even listen to what I was saying. It's like, so you got to try to identify with you don't have to know anything about sports to make a connection about, somebody wanting to be like, I don't even remember what they were, but let's just say it was somebody being the best that they can be. And I use sports as an example, and somebody's mind shuts off because they don't like sports. It's like, it's about being the best you can be. Apply it to tuba playing. I don't care what you apply it to whatever connects with you. And, and then you'll get it. And I think that that's a broad stroke that we can use, not only with the stuff I put out, but with the stuff anybody puts out. Try to connect with the lesson and see where you can apply it to your life. I mean, this is a daily thing. I do it with, like, for years as being a parent. When I was teaching Mateo something, I used to stop, and after I was done speaking with him, I'd go in my room and I'd be like, okay, what's the topic that I'm trying to teach him? What's the topic, and how can I learn to do this better in my life? So, like, if a teacher gave him a hard time and it's like, and it wasn't his fault, it's like, well, teachers have bad days too. And sometimes you have to look at them as humans and, cut them a break. And then I go into my life. Okay, how do I, how can I apply this into my life? Oh, well, I called up the electric company and this person was short with me. Well, maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe I should cut them a break. You see, it's the same. It doesn't matter if we're adults or children. We're learning the exact same stuff. It's just on different levels, So if we're looking to try to identify instead of compare, we can, there's opportunity for growth everywhere around us.
Absolutely. I love everything that you just said, and we're going to end with Kate, who has just some clarification that I thought was a great final question. Avoiding or deflecting uncomfortable conversation is the ego trying to keep us safe, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And Sandra says compassion.
Yes, we need to have compassion. And that was perfect. Real quick with Sandra. So, right, we're teaching compassion to our children. We're teaching compassion to ourselves. We're constantly learning the same things on different levels. And Kate, yeah, it's the, we went into that a lot in the two podcasts that we mentioned. So the next two is really going to dive into that deep. It's all the ego that, we don't feel safe. So we deflect, we get defensive, we do we get angry, like people think anger is such a bad thing because it's noisy, it's loud, and it can actually be very detrimental because it can, you can lash out physically or even verbally out of anger and cause other people tremendous suffering. So, I mean, of course, it's all bad in those ways, but all it is just another defense mechanism, So, like, we're so quick to judge people that have anger as their go-to, which I always did. So maybe I'm a little bit like just recently, in like the last year, I started noticing this. I was like, you know what? Telling people to never get angry is like telling somebody that's defensive to never get defensive.
Right.
It's like telling somebody that like just mutes themselves whenever there's a difficult conversation going on and retreats within themselves. Don't ever do that. Don't ever retreat within yourself. Don't ever deflect in a conversation ever again. If you ever feel uncomfortable, don't ever do that. They'd be like, well, that would be hard. I think that's going to take some work. Yeah. So is not getting angry. It's just a different way of dealing. When you're young, you learn a way of dealing that works. And when I was younger, getting picked on, I tried retreating. I tried deflecting. I tried comedy. I tried everything that I could and nothing worked. And then finally, when I lashed out in anger, people backed off. See how I pulled back the F-bomb?
Yes, I did.
So they backed off. so it worked, like, and then it's like, geez, I wonder why anger became a go-to. It's because it was literally the only thing that worked. That's why. So yeah, and I'm not making excuse for anger. It's, if you have it, you need to work on it. But it's just for the compassion's sake, like was just mentioned, have some compassion for people who are lashing out a little bit. Have some compassion, because especially if somebody's working on it. I mean, if they're not working on it, you don't have to subject yourself to somebody else's anger. That's not what I'm saying. Protect yourself. Get out of the situation. You don't have to subject yourself to it. I'm saying, in hindsight, when you're looking at that person, instead of judging them all the time, have a little compassion and understand that, especially if they're working on it, it's not an easy task.
Yeah, that's a great point. You can have compassion and not let yourself be, you can have empathy and not
right
be subject to it all the time.
Right.
You can still remove yourself.
I don't believe in righteous anger,
Yeah.
like, oh, it's, we have the right to be angry. Like, why would you want the right to be angry? Like, so then guess what?
Right.
You win. Anger. So
Yeah.
congratulations. You have the right to walk around angry. I'll forgo that right. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, if you guys have more questions that you want to ask Glenn, or a question that you wanted to ask but you didn't want to do it in such a public forum, send them in to Glenn@glennambrose.com, and he will do a solo show directly on your question alone. It comes out every Friday. It's called Ask Glenn Anything, and it is specifically for the email subscribers at glennambrose.com. So just go sign up there. It's free. He doesn't spam you with a bunch of emails or anything like that. And you just basically, you get this every Friday, and he'll answer your question. Send in the question, he'll answer it, no problem. You can pick up the book, Down to Earth: The Spiritual Guides Being to a Happy Human Experience. Did I get it even close to right?
It was close. You threw in a guide somewhere in the middle, I think.
Spiritual Being's Guide to a Happy Human Experience.
No, I think you got it right.
I got it right.
I think I heard it wrong. I think you got it right. Congratulations.
I know that there's 5 million things happening around me right now, but I still know the name of that book.
You know it better than I do.
Because I'm the one that pitches it every week, and then and people are reading it and loving it, and soon they're going to be listening to it and loving it. Which we found out here. Here's
something I want to throw out there. Please leave reviews everywhere. Like, that's something I never remember to ask for, and it's huge. So leave reviews. If I've done life coaching, if I've helped you, leave a review on Google, on wherever. If testimonials, I'll always take those, of course. But review the book. That's huge. That really gets people to see what it's about and that people are enjoying it, because I hear a ton of people are enjoying it, but there's very few reviews. So please review me, the book. Of course, if you like me. If you don't, just try to push me aside. But yeah, just please get some reviews out there, and that would be really helpful. And I guess that's going to do it. We'll wrap it up. Go to glennambrose.com. And if you do send in questions, you can even kind of say, hey, I'd love to see this on the next live Q&A, or hey, I'd love to get this on Ask Glenn Anything emails. If you have a specific direction you want it to go, let me know in the email. So that'll do it. glennambrose.com. Be there or be square, and we'll talk with you soon. See ya.